Welcome back to our deep dive into the Zodiac killer case. In this episode, we're picking up with part 3. A quick reminder that this content can be disturbing. We've got some resources in the show notes if you need them. Okay, so it's September 1969, 3 months since the last attack, and the Bay Area is on edge. Zodiac is still out there. And as we'll see, things are about to get even darker.
Yeah, what's really striking is how Zodiac seems to be escalating, like on two fronts. The attacks are becoming more brutal, and he's getting much better at manipulating the media, using it to amplify the fear.
Right. Let's start with the Lake Berryessa attack. Can you set the scene for us? What happened there?
Well, this one really shook investigators. It showed a level of premeditation and control that was just unsettling. So, Lake Berryessa, popular spot, it's a sunny afternoon, seems like the perfect day to be out on the water. And there are these 3 young women sunbathing, and they notice this man watching them. He's dressed kind of oddly for the warm weather, almost like he's trying to disguise himself. He kind of lingers, stares, and then just disappears. Then later, he reappears, watching a father and son fishing nearby.
Wow, that's creepy. Did anyone realize at that point how dangerous he might be?
Looking back, there's this sense of foreboding in the witness accounts. Like, people describe feeling uneasy, like something just wasn't right. But I don't think anyone could have predicted what was about to happen. Zodiac's intended victims this time were Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell. They were enjoying a peaceful afternoon on this small, secluded island when this man in dark clothing appears. And this time, he's wearing this, well, it's like a hooded costume.
Right, and this costume, it wasn't just any disguise, was it? I reckon he's particularly chilling.
It really was. He was wearing a dark hood that concealed his whole head and shoulders, just slits for his eyes, and he had sunglasses over those. And on his chest, he had this white crosshair symbol. This wasn't just a robbery. This was a performance. Like, he wanted to be seen, to be feared. He told the couple this made-up story about escaping from Deer Lodge Prison in Montana. He tied them up with these pre-cut lengths of clothesline, and then
He attacked them.
yes, he stabbed them both repeatedly. Brian, he was thinking fast, pleaded with the attacker to stab him first so he wouldn't have to watch Cecilia suffer. He was stabbed 6 times, but somehow he survived. Cecilia, though, she was stabbed 14 times. And tragically, she didn't make it.
That's just brutal.
Yeah.
So did the Zodiac just disappear after the attack? How did he get away?
Well, witnesses saw him walking back towards his car after the attack. Like, he was totally calm, just walking away. But, and this is important, before leaving, he took the time to leave a message on the car door. This wasn't about a stolen car or making a quick getaway. This was about sending a message, taking credit for this horrifying act. The message was similar to the ones he'd left at previous crime scenes. It confirmed, that the Zodiac had struck again.
And then he follows up the attack with that chilling phone call to the Napa Police Department, right?
Exactly. Calls the police, calmly confesses to the murders, and hangs up before they can get any real information from him. It's like he wanted to be in control, to dictate the terms of the investigation, taunt the authorities.
Yeah, it really does seem like he enjoyed toying with the police. But was it just about provoking them? Or was there something more to it?
That's a really good question. He clearly craved attention, notoriety, each phone call, each letter to the press. It was a way for him to insert himself into the narrative, to become, well, a larger-than-life figure.
It's interesting you say larger than life. Do you think that was a conscious goal of his? To become this almost mythical figure?
I think it's definitely possible. He was constructing a persona, an image, with each communication. The costume, the symbol, the cryptic messages, it all contributed to the mystique. It's almost as if he wanted to be more than just a criminal. He wanted to be a legend.
And the media played right into his hands, didn't they? Giving him the attention he craved, publishing his letters, broadcasting his demands.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, this was before 24-hour news and the internet. The Zodiac case, it was a media sensation, dominating headlines, fueling public fear.
But the police weren't just sitting back letting him control the narrative, were they? They were trying to track him down.
Oh, they were, and they had some close calls, some near misses. There was this one resourceful radio reporter, Pat Stanley. He actually tracked down the payphone the Zodiac had used. They found the receiver dangling, lifted fingerprints. But the Zodiac was always one step ahead.
So, one brutal attack down. And unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. The next attack takes us to the streets of San Francisco. Tell us about the murder of Paul Stine.
Paul Stine was a hard-working cab driver. He was also a PhD student, actually. Known for his intelligence, his friends even called him Einstein. He was just trying to make a living driving his cab on a Saturday night when he picked up the wrong fare.
So the Zodiac posed as a passenger.
Exactly. gets into Paul's cab, direct them to a specific location in Presidio Heights. Everything seemed normal until, suddenly, Paul was shot in the head, killed instantly.
This attack seems different from the others. Much more public, not a couple in a lover's lane. Did investigators immediately connect it to the Zodiac?
Not at first, no. They found evidence at the scene, bloody fingerprints, men's gloves, the bullet casing, but initially they thought it was a robbery, especially because, the Zodiac had targeted couples in isolated areas before.
So what made them realize it was another Zodiac attack.
2 days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received a package. It contained a blood-soaked piece of fabric and a letter. The letter started with that chilling line, "This is the Zodiac speaking," and the cloth. Well, it was later confirmed to be a piece of Paul Stine's shirt. No doubt left this was the Zodiac.
Wow, that's cold-blooded. And what did this letter say? Did he give any indication of why he chose Paul Stine?
The letter was this rambling mix of boasts, threats, and taunts. He claimed to have killed 7 people so far, which was more than the police knew about. He talked about wearing disguises to avoid detection, and even provided detailed bomb-making instructions. He seemed to enjoy bragging about how he was outsmarting the police, even claimed that he wiped down Paul Stine's cab to leave false clues.
So he wasn't just trying to evade capture. He was actively trying to mislead the investigation.
He was, and he seemed to be reveling in it. But the most terrifying part of the letter was a threat directed at school children. He wrote about shooting out the tires of a school bus and picking off the children as they fled.
Oh my God, that's horrific. What was the reaction to that?
It unleashed a wave of panic across the Bay Area. Parents were terrified to send their kids to school. And the police. They were under immense pressure to catch him. There were even copycat incidents, hoax calls, adding to the chaos and fear.
It seems like he was intentionally trying to maximize the terror, using the media to spread panic and create a sense of helplessness.
Oh, he was definitely playing on the public's fear. And the media, eager for any new development in the case, well, they gave him a platform to do so.
So one attack shows this chilling level of premeditation and control, and the next demonstrates this willingness to strike in broad daylight, seemingly without a motive. It's like he's getting more brazen, more unpredictable.
That's a key point. The Zodiac wasn't just evolving, he was escalating. And this escalation was playing out in real time, with the entire world watching.
I mean, can you imagine? It must have been a terrifying time for everyone in the Bay Area to live with that level of uncertainty, not knowing where or when this, unstoppable force might strike again.
Oh, absolutely. The fear was palpable. It permeated every aspect of life. People were changing their routines, avoiding certain areas, always looking over their shoulders. The Zodiac had, in a sense, taken control of the city's collective psyche.
And it sounds like he was enjoying that control, feeding off the fear he was generating. So did investigators manage to make any progress in the case during this time?
They were trying everything they could think of. Paul Stine's brother, Joe Stine, he actually offered himself as bait, hoping to lure the Zodiac into a trap.
Wow, that's incredible. An incredible act of courage, or maybe desperation. But the Zodiac didn't take the bait.
No, he didn't. It was a risky move, and thankfully it didn't backfire. But it really highlights, the level of frustration and determination in this case. They also set up a stakeout at Blue Rock Springs Park. Remember, the site of one of the earlier attacks? They were using a bait car. But again, the Zodiac didn't show.
It seems like he was getting more cautious. Like he was aware of the increased police presence and that they were trying to predict his next move. Did they have any leads regarding the weapons used in the attacks?
Not really, unfortunately. They investigated 3 different firearms that were potentially linked to the crimes, but they all turned out to be dead ends, all legally registered, no connection to the Zodiac. He seemed to be very careful about covering his tracks.
And then the case takes another strange turn. With these late-night phone calls to the Oakland Police Department, this is where we encounter the mysterious Sam, right?
That's right. The caller claimed to be the Zodiac and demanded to speak to 2 very specific lawyers, Melvin Belli and F. Lee Bailey, live on television. And he insisted that they call him Sam during the broadcast.
Okay, that's a bizarre request. What was the thinking behind agreeing to something like that?
Well, the police were desperate for any kind of break in the case. They hoped that by engaging with Sam, they might be able to get some valuable information, or maybe even trick him into revealing something about his true identity.
So they went through with it. Did Sam actually call in?
He did. The next morning, a very tense episode of the Jim Dunbar Show aired. Melvin Belli was there in the studio ready to take the call, and Sam. He called in several times throughout the show, complaining of headaches, making these cryptic threats, even threatened to jump off a building if Belli didn't agree to meet him in person.
Wow, so it sounds like they were walking a tightrope, trying to engage him without escalating the situation further. Did Belly end up meeting with Sam?
He tried to, Belly hoping to de-escalate the situation and maybe get Sam into custody. He convinced him to meet at a different location, so Belly went to the designated spot, with the media and a bunch of police officers, but Sam never showed up.
Another dead end. So what did they ultimately determine about Sam and his claims?
Well, through voice comparisons and further investigation, they discovered that Sam was actually a patient at a mental health facility. His name was Eric Weil. It turned out to be an elaborate hoax, unfortunately diverting valuable time and resources away from the real investigation.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the investigators. I mean, the real Zodiac is out there committing murders, sending cryptic messages, and now they're dealing with copycats and hoax calls. So what was the next significant development in the case?
Well, despite all the chaos and misdirection, the real Zodiac, he remained silent for a while. But the silence was broken when another package arrived. This time at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle.
Another letter. What was in this one?
This time it wasn't a letter, but a blood-soaked greeting card. And not just any card, one that parodied a popular television commercial. Inside, the Zodiac had written a message, and he included what became known as the 340 cipher.
The 340 cipher. Can you explain what that is?
It's a coded message, 340 characters long, created by the Zodiac. He actually requested that the Chronicle print it on the front page, claiming that he got awfully lonely when ignored. He seemed to believe, or at least claimed to believe, that the cipher contained his true identity.
Wow, did anyone ever manage to crack the code?
Not for decades. The FBI, the CIA, countless amateur code breakers, everyone tried. But the 340, it remained a mystery. It wasn't until 2020, over 50 years later, that a team of 3 amateur code breakers finally cracked it.
That's incredible. 50 years. So what did the message say? Did it reveal his identity?
The message was cryptic and rambling, but no, it didn't reveal his name. It was more the same boasts and threats, Lines like, "I hope you're having lots of fun and trying to catch me, and I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me."
So more taunting and attempts to instill fear. Did he send anything else along with the cipher?
He did. In the message with the cipher, he claimed to have killed 7 people, talked about using disguises, and even gave detailed instructions on how to build a bomb. He specifically mentioned wiping down Paul Stein's cab to mislead the police, which confirmed their suspicions, about his intentions.
It's clear that he was just, reveling in the attention and that sense of power he was gaining. But then, amidst all this bravado, he sends this letter to Melvin Belly. And it seemed to have a completely different tone.
That's right. This letter, it arrived while Belly was actually out of the country. And it was soaked in, you guessed it, more of Paul Stein's blood. The content was particularly disturbing. The Zodiac wrote about feeling overwhelmed, pleading for Belly's help, and even expressed fear about losing control. He mentioned a bomb, saying that children were safe for now, but the implication was that they might not be safe for much longer.
Wow, this seems like such a stark contrast to his previous communications. Is this the same person who boasted about being too clever for the police? Was he genuinely struggling, or was this another manipulation tactic?
It's hard to say for sure. There's this strange mix of arrogance and vulnerability in the Zodiac's communications. It's possible he was experiencing some sort of mental breakdown, or maybe he was trying to elicit sympathy or manipulate Belly into helping him.
So did Belly respond to this letter?
He did, publicly, in the San Francisco Chronicle. He offered to meet with the Zodiac and help in any way he could.
And how did the Zodiac react to this offer of help?
The only response Belly received was more calls from Sam. Remember, the patient at the mental health facility. He called Belly, claimed it was his birthday, and then hung up. He also called the Jim Dunbar show again, but not long enough to be traced.
So while the world was focused on Belly's offer and the possibility of a breakthrough, the real Zodiac remained silent, lurking in the shadows. It's like he was watching everything unfold, enjoying the chaos he'd created.
Exactly. He had managed to inject himself into the public consciousness, becoming the symbol of fear and uncertainty. And through it all, he remained elusive, a phantom taunting the authorities and terrorizing a city.
It's just incredible, how much fear and uncertainty he managed to generate with just a handful of letters and phone calls. But even as the investigation seemed to, stall out, there was this one final unsettling detail that emerged. A chilling story from a man named Donald Cheney.
Cheney's story, it really adds a layer of complexity to this case that's Well, it's hard to shake. It's almost like we're getting a glimpse into a mind that was either deeply disturbed or, and this might be even more unsettling, a mind that was like in sync with the Zodiac's thinking.
Can you elaborate on that? What exactly is Donald Cheney's connection to this case?
So in January of 1968, about a year before the first confirmed Zodiac attack, Cheney was on a hunting trip with a friend. And during their trip, their conversation took a very dark turn. Cheney's friend, kind of out of nowhere, asks him, "Have you ever thought about hunting people?"
Wow, okay. That's a disturbing question to ask anyone, let alone a friend. How did Cheney react to that?
Well, he was obviously taken aback by it, but his friend didn't stop there. He went on to describe in detail how he would carry out such attacks, talking about targeting couples in lovers' lanes, using a gun with a flashlight and an aiming device, even shooting out tires to prevent escape.
These details they're eerily similar to the Zodiac's methods.
They are strikingly similar. Cheney's friend even mentioned targeting school buses, shooting children as they tried to flee, just like the threat the Zodiac would later make. He also talked about leaving no motive, sending taunting letters to the police, bragging about his crimes.
It's almost as if he was, like, laying out the Zodiac's playbook before the Zodiac even existed. Did Cheney's friend ever give a reason for wanting to do these things?
No, he didn't offer any explanation, no motivation. He just described these horrific acts in this cold, matter-of-fact way. And then he adds one more detail, the detail that, well, it sent chills down Cheney's spine. He said that if he were to carry out these attacks, he would sign the letters with a specific name, Zodiac.
That's chilling. So did Cheney ever report this conversation to the police?
He didn't, not at the time. It wasn't until after the Zodiac killings began and the name Zodiac became public that he remembered this disturbing conversation and felt like he had to come forward.
What happened after he reported it? Did the police investigate Cheney's friend as a possible suspect?
You know, the source material doesn't actually say whether or not Cheney's friend was ever seriously investigated. It just leaves us with this unsettling possibility, this suggestion that someone out there may have known about the Zodiac's plans, or at least had a disturbingly similar mindset before any of the attacks occurred.
Wow, that adds a whole new dimension to the mystery.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about the origins of the Zodiac persona. Was it entirely his own creation? Or was he drawing inspiration from someone or something else?
It's a question that may never have a definitive answer, but it definitely highlights the fact that even though we've uncovered a lot of information about this case, there are still many unknowns, many loose ends that continue to fascinate and, well, intrigue us, I guess.
This deep dive into the Zodiac case has been both fascinating and, well, disturbing. We've seen how he evolved from a shadowy figure into this, like, media-savvy manipulator controlling the narrative, escalating his attacks, leaving a trail of unanswered questions.
Yeah, and what I find so striking is his ability to adapt, to change. He shifted his methods, his targets, his means of communication, always staying one step ahead.
And the fact that he was never caught. That his true identity remains a mystery, it just adds to the fascination. This idea of him being this almost mythical figure, do you think that his ability to evade capture contributed to that mystique, to this idea of him being almost larger than life?
Oh, absolutely. The Zodiac became a symbol of fear, but also a symbol of the unknown, of the limits of our ability to understand and control the darkness. You know, the darkness that can exist in the human heart.
This case, it really challenges us to think critically, to examine the evidence carefully, and to acknowledge that sometimes, even with all the information we have, there are mysteries that may never be fully solved.
I think that's a valuable lesson to take away from this. And really, from any deep dive into a complex subject like this, there's always more to learn, more to explore, more to question. And sometimes the most unsettling truths are the ones that remain just out of reach.
Well, that wraps up our three-part exploration of the Zodiac killer case. We've delved into the details of his crimes, explored the psychology of a killer, and examined the impact he had on society. It's a case that continues to fascinate and horrify, reminding us that even in a world that strives for order and understanding, there are still dark corners that may never be fully illuminated.
And it serves as a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge and understanding, it's an ongoing process, a journey that often leads to more questions than answers, but it's a journey worth taking, even when it leads us into the heart of darkness.